Welcome to Hardware Asylum. In this video we're going to once again be working on the Scamcase. It doesn't look much like the Scamcase anymore due to the replacement of the front bezel. The chassis itself is exactly the same, and I've gutted it because we're going to be building a RestoMod. Off camera I was testing some of the hardware that we'll be putting into this build. However, we need to do some prep work, including installing our power supply, setting up the power connections, and making sure all of it works. Now off camera I did a little bit of work on my Socket 5 Intel branded motherboard that will be going into the Scamcase. This will have a Pentium 133 processor, a Matrox Mystique graphics card, and 64 megs of EDO memory. The thing that we need to focus on in this particular episode will be fabricating the power. To run these baby AT motherboards we have two 6-pin power connectors here, and to activate the power supply you need to be able to short two wires together. On an AT style power supply, this has high voltage current going to it. Over on the ATX, this is more or less just closing two low voltage connections, and we'll be able to hook that into the switch that we built on the Scamcase bezel. The first project that we need to tackle is how to connect my power switch, which is right here, to the AT to ATX adapter. What I think I'm going to do is connect a couple of pin headers to these activation leads that will allow me to plug into the plug that I connected to the power switch itself. And to do that, what I'm going to do is modify this fan tail. The pin headers here will fit into the adapter, and all I need to do is just solder my activation leads to the other end of the pin header. These power adapters are relatively easy to get off of Amazon and eBay. They work great. They connect an ATX power supply to an AT style motherboard, and it's mostly done for industrial compatibility. Of course, you won't get negative 5 volts off of a modern ATX power supply, but for this particular build, that's not going to be a problem. And to get started, we just need to clip these leads off. Strip this back, and then we get ready to solder. In the previous video I talked about how I'm going to use a modern power supply in the Scamcase build, and I showed you two SFX power supplies from SilverStone. One was a 750 watt platinum and the other was a 500 watt gold that was slightly larger at the SFXL sizing. Well, SilverStone came through and they supplied me with a 300 watt ST30SF power supply. This is a version 2. It is 80 plus bronze, but for these retro machines, the power efficiency is not that important. Let's look inside. So we have the normal documentation from SilverStone, which is great because it talks about what the power supply can do and how to hook it up. We have a very large installation manual. And here we have the power supply itself. This is an SFX, which means it's really super small. The version 2 comes with a 92mm fan, and this is supposed to run all the time, so it's not semi-fanless. Some of the SFX power supplies that you can buy have a semi-fanless mode, where if the power is below 50 or 60%, the fan will not turn on. And that's just a testament of the efficiency of the 80 plus gold and platinum power supplies. As you can see, the leads are connected, so we don't have a modular power supply. Again, not that important. However, we do have an issue where we have SATA power plugs. Those will have to be addressed in some way. We also have the 12-volt power, which is common for modern motherboards. We're not going to need those on this particular build, but they're nice to have. And then we have our 24 power connector, which has a bracket so we can remove it and get to the 20-pin part, which is what we'll need for our adapter. Also with this power supply, it does come with the adapter bracket, allowing you to install this SFX power supply in any modern chassis that supports the full-size AT or ATX power supplies. You also get a power cord, which is very handy, although I do have a box full of them, and some screws to install. SFX power supplies are designed for small form factor machines. That'll work great for my mini tower chassis. The accessory plugs do get quite lengthy, but having a little extra here is not a bad thing. For Molex, which is what we care about in our Scamcase build, we have two standard Molex, and then we have the one for the floppy drive. Two is not going to be enough. And while it's great that we have SATA plugs, we're not going to need them, and so we're going to modify this power supply to better fit our build. As a case modder, it's important to have pieces and parts, and well, I have a bunch. In this bag I have a bunch of wires, and really I saved these so that I had extra wire for projects and whatnot, but in here are the ends off of power supplies. So the power supplies that I no longer needed or had blown up, I cut all of the ends off of them to keep the plugs and the wires, threw the device away, and that's going to be a good thing for us because I should be able to pull out a wire to replace our SATA plugs. Some of these have been used already. As you can see, this one's I cut the end off of. Not going to be able to use that. This one looks promising. We have 3 Molex plugs and an end, so we'll set that aside. Here we might have a match. This is off of a modular power supply. You can tell by the plug on the end. It does come with sleeving, so it will look much like the wires on the current power supply. We get 2 Molex plugs, and we have the small one for floppy drives. Of course, here's proof that I've been doing this for quite a while. As you can see, I have 2 6-pin AT power connections that I cut off of a power supply. It's funny, now I'm been scouring around looking for power supplies, and you know, I had them before. We don't need the orange wire, we just need to strip these back. Now that we've modified the power supply to add our extra Molex plugs, I've attached the adapter plate and we can install it. The power supply looks out of place, but it's really leaps and bounds more efficient than the PSU that was in here to begin with. And we have room up on top, so for the PCI Express and the 4-pin power, we will just loop those up above and we'll keep them out of the way. Alright, the last mod that we need to do before we can start assembling the Scamcase build is to adjust my 3D printed part that will hold the SD card to IDE adapter. When I designed this, I have a hole here so that when it 3D prints, it will actually fill in with solid plastic here, so that way I can drill this out to accept any size screw that I need to have. What I found works best is just the standard case screw. It doesn't need to be drilled out much, but just enough to allow the threads to get cut into the plastic. And of course, if I needed to do a through bolt, I could drill this out larger and basically accept any size screw I want in there. The part that is printed are these little raised areas, and that will space the bottom of the adapter away from the plastic, which is kind of important because of these pins off of the Molex. They hang down pretty low. There we have it. I just need to find some screws in my bag of screws, and away we go. And with the screws attached, we're done with all the prep work. And I think that will be it for this particular episode. Stay tuned for the next one when we go over the entire build and put this Pentium 133 together. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.